Welcome to the Becoming Superhuman podcast, where we interview extraordinary people to bring you the skills and strategies to overcome the impossible. And now, here's your host, Jonathan Levy.
Before we get started, I want to ask you a question. Every single week, we bring you these episodes full of dozens of skills, habits, routines, and strategies to help you become more superhuman. Now, be honest. What percentage of those things are you actually able to implement in your life? Of course not. You need the accountability and community. And that's why in 2018, I launched the Becoming Superhuman Mastermind. Every month, as a community, we invite a world-renowned expert in to lead a 1-month challenge. Past challenges have included environmental design with Benjamin Hardy, hacking your sleep with Nick Littlehales, who is Cristiano Ronaldo's own sleep coach, and meditation with Muse founder Ariel Garten. On top of that, we send out a care package with all the gear and goodies you need to complete that month's challenge. And best of all, as a member, you get exclusive discounts to all kinds of events, courses, supplements, and gear. And those discounts alone are worth more than your entire membership. Look, as a listener of this podcast, we know that you stand to benefit a great deal from being in the group, but also that you stand to contribute a lot. And that's why we're offering 50% off your first month. To join, visit superhuman.blog/mastermind today. Greetings, SuperFriends, and welcome to this week's episode. Hey, before I tell you who our guest is, do me a quick favor, hop onto iTunes and leave us a wonderful 5-star review if you've been enjoying the show. I normally read out amazing reviews from listeners like you, and it's been a while since I've had one to read, and that's a total bummer for the whole team. I really, really appreciate it. On to today's episode. Today, we are joined by Diana House. She is a business finance expert, serial entrepreneur that has sold 2 e-commerce companies, and a private lender and real estate investor. She also loves the challenge of becoming superhuman through adventures in diet, exercise, mindset, faith, goal setting, and personal development. Now, I know that business finance is normally not a topic that we talk about on the show, but I actually had a call with Diana as a coach, and I thought she was so interesting and had such an interesting way of looking at life and the world and personal finance and goal setting and growth that I just had to have her on the show. She's one of the people who's done the most investment in herself and in improving herself out of literally anybody that I know. And I always love to meet those kinds of people and hear what the best things that they've done are, what the best investments they've made, what the best mindset changes they've made. So we had a really great episode. We had no shortage of things to talk about, as with every single time that we talk. And I think you guys are really, really going to enjoy it. We talk about the best things she's ever done for herself. We talk about a lot of different ways that you can become financially superhuman and change your mindset, not just about who you are and what you're worth, but also about money and how you use it in your life to create health, happiness, and success. So without any further ado, please meet my super friend, Diana House. Diana, hello. Welcome to the show. Good to see you again.
So great to chat again.
Yes, you gave me a lot of food for thought, and you shook a lot of things up in my world, all of them for the better. I'm still working on implementing all the things that you shared with me in our, I think it was a 30-minute call or a 1-hour call, but I've been digesting it for months. So I'm really excited to just get inside your head since you got inside my head.
I loved our call. I think we both speak and think at the same pace. So we fit a lot into that hour. Yes.
So give folks a little bit of a background. I always love to ask serial entrepreneurs or people who do a lot of stuff. The other day I had JJ Virgin on the show and I was like, how do you describe what you do? Like if you're sat next to someone on an airplane and they say oh, so what do you do? So what do you do, Diana?
By the way, I love JJ. I just actually sent her something. I sent her a thank you because she just facilitated an amazing introduction for me. So I'm a fan.
She's awesome.
Love her. Yeah, we got to go hiking a few months ago in Utah, and I loved hearing her story. But back to my story for a second. So I am a serial entrepreneur. I actually started out in law school And 3 weeks into law school, I knew that I would not be a lawyer. And after finishing law school, which I did complete, I sold all my belongings, my car, my surfboard, rented out my room in Australia, and fled to Bali for a yoga teacher training, which at the time I was very obsessed with yoga. And while I was in Bali, I found the idea for my first business, which was a yoga jewelry company that I sold a few months ago called Tiny Devotions. I operated it for 10 years, and I have started other businesses in e-commerce. I know you have an e-commerce background as well. And now I focus on private lending and also real estate development and working with entrepreneurs around their money mindset and more tactical things around business finance.
I love that. Tell me a little bit about what private lending is, because I've heard the term and I've just kind of pretended like I know what people are talking about.
Private lending is where individuals or a group of individuals kind of act as a bank and give someone capital towards a real estate project. So there's many things that banks will not finance. Some of those things are, farm properties or land, or potentially it's to a different demographic. Sometimes it's hard for immigrants or entrepreneurs to get traditional bank financing. So what we do is we give them money that is secured by the asset, which would be the real estate, for them to, do their project or buy their property. And it's usually in a short-term sense so that they can eventually go back to the bank and get more long-term financing.
That's really cool. And I know I'm going to regret saying this on the air, but let's talk about that because I am always looking for investment opportunities. Please, everybody, don't email me your startup idea, but let's wrap about that because that's really interesting. Now, the other thing I want to ask or share with the audience is you are probably one of the most life hacky people I've ever met. And that's really why we wanted to connect on the show, because I think you take it even further than I do, which is rare for me to say. Tell me a little bit about how you live your life and just the habits and stuff that you do to get the most out of your time and out of your life.
Sure. So I was really reflecting on this before I came on the show because I've never actually spoken about this publicly. And I think, entrepreneurs, they either have a superhuman capacity or they have to create the environment for them to be superhuman if they don't naturally have that. And so some of my friends have what I call CEO capacity. And so what that means is they can literally work all day, all night, nonstop for days, weeks, months, years without stopping. And I have many friends who are like this. I do not have that. I would say I actually have, somewhat of a limited capacity with my brain just doesn't work for, days on end. I have to work in smaller short spurts. So what I have done is created an environment for myself to really thrive with my limitations. And so one of the things that I do is I'm definitely ADHD, but it doesn't even bother me because I've done these little hacks. The main one is I love waking up really, really early when no one is awake and doing my hardest work when I have, no distractions, no husband that's awake, no text messages, no phone calls. And so usually that is between 5 a.m. and 10 a.m. is when I do my most work and my hardest work. Sometimes it's even earlier. Sometimes I'm crushing it at 4. If it's before that and I wake up, I'm okay, no, I got to force myself to go back to bed because that's getting a little bit outrageous. But I think, really maximizing the morning time for me is one of my biggest hacks because by 10 a.m., I'm pretty much done most of my real work. And then I can really go more with the flow of, is it time to go work out? Or do I want to get on a call with someone or, connect with my team or go for a walk or things like that? That's kind of my number one thing that I do.
That's such a great skill. And it's something that I'm only now learning. And it's really hard because I think a lot of times, as entrepreneurs or just as people in general, we take on these social limits that say, well, once I sit down to work, I'm not going to go work out after I've started to work, or I'm not going to, break these patterns. And I've realized I work essentially 9 to 4, but there's no reason. I could show up to work at 11. I could do my workout and my meditation and all my other stuff and show up whenever I want. And it's breaking that pattern and figuring out what works for you. In your case, like waking up really early, getting all your work done, and then being like not feeling socially guilty that you're kind of like done by 10 a.m. It's like such an important thing.
So much of anything we do in life is actually like deconditioning ourselves to what society says and doing what is actually best for us. And so for me, one of the biggest challenges that I had as an entrepreneur starting out was I knew that I didn't function in an office, even though we had an office for our team. And so the first few years, I had a ton of guilt around this because even though we had an office, I would stay home and work from home on our dining room table, which I call the boardroom. And it wasn't until putting myself in a situation where I saw someone else do that at a very high level that they gave me permission inadvertently. And so that person was Richard Branson. So I forced myself to get around Richard to see, he never worked in an office from like day one. And I wanted to see for a week how he functioned without that. And it really made me feel like, okay, well, if Richard Branson has never had an office and it's worked out for him really well and his team has accepted it, then my team, whether it's this team or, a future team at the time, because I didn't know if that team was going to be able to handle this, then I'll find a new team that accepts that this is how I stay in my zone of genius and how I am like superhuman productive.
Totally. And I had that same realization. Like I go into my quote office at WeWork once or twice a week. It makes such a big difference. Tell me how you got to hang out with Richard Branson for a week.
So, I always joke that if you write a big enough check, you can do pretty much anything you want in the world.
So true.
And people always say, like, if money can solve it, it's not a problem. So
I'm going to fix that one for you. Dan Sullivan has a perfect quote on that. If you have enough money to solve the problem, you don't have the problem.
Yes, perfect. Yeah, you refined that. Thank you. So it was about, I think, 3 years ago. And I had worked really, really hard as an entrepreneur, and I'm pretty good with money because of, different things that I've put myself through. And so I had never really done anything outrageous financially as an entrepreneur, even though I had, many years of a lot of financial success. So I knew that it was time to make that switch. I think every entrepreneur goes through a phase, and, non-entrepreneurs as well, where you go from being in survival mode to stepping into like more of a freedom mode. And you'd think that that would be easy, but oftentimes for entrepreneurs or, high level achievers, superhumans, it's really hard to actually accept that jump. So I was sitting in a hammock in Florida, reflecting on, my first 6 or 7 years as an entrepreneur. And, I'd scaled a, very profitable 7-figure company. I'd won awards. It was all good. I had tons of money in the bank. And I really said to myself, what is something that I want to do for myself that is maybe a bit outrageous, but that would really be like my bucket list item? And so some people would want to go to the moon, and I have friends that are doing that. But I really, really wanted to go spend a week with Richard Branson on Necker Island. So there is a crazy story of events of how I actually made that decision. It was a very hard decision for me to make because it was a fortune. I think it was about $45,000 US, which at the time was like 55,000 Canadian. I'm Canadian. So it was a huge financial investment, and all logical parts of my brain were telling me that this was absolutely crazy. But I think in life, there's certain things that you just have to do the crazy thing. And I ended up meeting the buyer for Tiny Devotions on Necker Island. And I also made a business bestie and had a huge upgrade by just spending time with Richard Branson. So it was one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life, but it was a very terrifying decision to make.
That is such an awesome story. It's like what Ben Hardy says. You made a psychological upgrade because the second you invest in yourself in that way, you're like, holy crap, like I'm actually worth this much money. And I actually am the kind of person who does this, who, you instantly you went from being a millionaire on paper to being someone who acts like a millionaire and makes decisions and networking connections that a millionaire would make. It's such an important thing, whether it's, I would watch people in my MBA program, like they cut $100,000 check for this MBA, which is a more socially acceptable way for some stupid reason than spending 40 grand to go to Necker Island, even though it's not going to make you as much money as meeting people on Necker Island. Anyway, it's more of a socially acceptable thing, but they would do that. And then over the course of 10 months, they would become someone who's like shit, I'm an MBA. I'm worth 180,000 euro a year. Whereas before I was only worth 100. And it's literally just a psychological upgrade. Like anyone who's done an MBA, myself included, will tell you it's pretty much bullshit what you're actually learning in the classroom.
Right. But no, it is that upgrade. And it's very interesting that you bring up the socially accepted ones versus the not. I have a very close friend who did a program at Harvard last year, and they were very nervous about going because they're like, what if I'm not good enough, or what if, they ended up being, of course, like one of the smartest people in the rooms. However, this person had avoided ever hiring a coach and doing that deep mindset work. And a series of events made them understand, like, oh, wow, I have now done every possible external socially acceptable thing, and I'm still rubbing up against this mindset issue. So they actually, like yesterday, just hired a coach, and it was extremely expensive. It was $15,000 for a 3-month retainer. And they were freaking out doing it because they were like, well, no one ever taught me that this was okay. Like, how could I possibly ever do this? And everything you said is 100% right on. Just by them making that decision and paying that illogical amount of money to do this work, that is the first step in doing the self-worth exercise that is holding them back.
I love that. I mean, I saw that the minute I went to Summit, which, is like a $4,000 conference, and you're rubbing elbows with like Eric Schmidt and all kinds of people who you look up to so much, and you have this imposter syndrome. Like I had imposter syndrome of like, I don't belong here. And then after 2 to 3 days, you're like, wait a minute, I was chosen to be here. So like, maybe I am this, like, this is maybe where I got in my career. And then the same thing at, at Genius Network going and like you're sitting next to Dave Asprey and you're like, oh, okay. Yeah, no, holy crap, like I've come a long way, and just adjusting to it. And we see the same thing. You don't have to talk about huge sums of money. It's more about investing in yourself at any level. Like we had someone join our mastermind, which is not super expensive, and then go into the like thread and was just like, I think I've made a huge mistake. I can't believe that I spent, $150 a month on myself.
Oh gosh, that's nothing.
Right. And just like, I'm not worth it. I've just made another mistake, like thinking that I could be something. And I was like, dude, that's not what's happening. What's happening is your subconscious is experiencing the fact that you just made an upgrade and a commitment to yourself and your self-improvement. And you're now among a community of people who are achievers. Your subconscious is fighting the fact that you're trying to become one of us. And like, you are one of us. You can become one of us. Like all it takes is just show up every week and receive the coaching and do the work. And like, you're here. And I don't know if he stuck around or not, but you could see that this was like his subconscious fighting against the fact that like, you've arrived, man. You've already made the decision. Like you're improving, you're growing, and you're what Eckhart Tolle calls the pain body doesn't want you to.
It's so painful for people. Literally, while you were saying that, I was just thinking that I'm like, it's so painful. And I've witnessed people go through those upgrades. It is so, so painful for them. And they need to have, the awareness that it's going to be different on the other side and that the pain is worth it. And I almost liken it to doing a cold plunge. Like no one wants to jump into cold water, like, and like, oh, like I really want to feel that horrible sensation of freezing myself all the way through, but it's so good for you. And you almost need to like override the fear and think about what's going to happen after and the benefits, which is like my nervous system is going to reset. When I go into the warm water, I'm going to have all these amazing tingles. So, you need to have the leverage on yourself about why this is so important and what's going to happen because of doing this painful thing and pushing through.
Totally. And I mean, it's just like on the other side, there's so much. And the best thing is it's like an onion, right? You keep peeling back the layers. Like you make one upgrade, whether that's a degree, and then you realize like, okay, there's a next level up. Like look at my manager or look at that entrepreneur whose stuff I've been reading. Like there's just more and more and more layers. And I imagine when you get to the bottom, when you're Richard Branson, that's a pretty depressing moment. Not that I think he's a depressed person. When you realize that there's no more quick wins, no more psychological upgrades. But I don't know that many people ever get to that point because no matter where you are, and I'll say this as like, quote unquote, a thought leader. I wouldn't call myself that, but someone who, seems to have it all figured out. Like for myself, and I'm sure you would agree to this, Diana, there's always a next level, right? Like I go to Genius Network meetings. I put myself in a room and I'm like, oh my God, like I was sitting with Dave Asprey at one of the events and I was like, God, Dave's got it all figured out. But I know I've been through enough rounds of this to know that Dave doesn't have it all figured out, right? Like Dave's still figuring out how to build his business and improve his life and spend more time with his family. And, I'm very close with Joe Polish and I know like you just get better problems, right?
Bigger problems, bigger and better.
Totally. And I have no shortage of problems. Knock on wood, they're really good problems to have. But like, don't think that myself or anyone on this podcast has it figured out because we don't.
There's always another level. And even so I'm a big proponent of masterminds and groups. And the one group I'm in, there is one of the most successful female entrepreneurs I've ever known. And she was giving us her high level updates of the crazy, amazing things that are happening in her life. There's an LOI with someone like Richard Branson. There is a merger, crazy, amazing things. And what I know enough that those high achievers are struggling too. So I was like, that's amazing. And we're celebrating you, but like, where's your biggest struggle area right now? Like, what is the blind spot? Where are you hiding right now? Where are you not looking? And she thought about it for a second and she was like, it's my family life. And so there's always a blind spot. And even I'm sure Richard Branson and Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, I'm sure there is something with them that they're struggling with on some level because we're human. We never get to that level of perfection. And I always say this and I teach this, there's always another level.
Yes, I love that. And there's two ways, and I just want to like nip this in the bud for people. There's two ways to look at that, right? There's the first way, which is like the super depressing way of like, really, you mean no matter how much money I have, no matter how perfect my family is, like I'm always going to have problems. Like how depressing is life? How awful is life? But the other way is to go, wait a minute, like I'm perfectly fine because no one else has it figured out better than I do. Like I'm still always going to have these problems. And then that's just the new normal and accept that like I'm always going to have problems. That's the human condition, right? Is always struggling to something better. And I really want to encourage people to look at it the second way, not the first way.
Yeah, growth is so fun, like you're like growing or you're dying, some people say. And it doesn't even have to, be in finances or in your career, but like in some area of your life, like we want to be growing and improving and learning.
Absolutely. Now, on the topic of growth, you have done, so I don't know if it was before or after this $45,000 investment in yourself to go to Necker Island, but I mean, in a 1 hour conversation with you, you're like, oh, have you considered this coaching program? It was really good. And then this, you should also maybe consider this one. It was really good. You've invested a lot in yourself over the years. I'd love to hear more about that because I think that's a passion that you and I and also all of our listeners share. Like, what are some of the programs you've done? How have they impacted you?
Yeah. So I recently was curious, like, how much have I spent on professional development? And I went back and looked at my profit and loss statements for the past 10 years, and I've spent over $250,000. So over $250,000 on, personal professional development. And so I have done a lot, and I feel like I have done very little. Like there's so much more that I want to do, and you also have to pace yourself. One of the best things that I've ever done was Tony Robbins' Business Mastery Program.
Really?
I'm a big fan of it, and I actually did it twice in 1 year because I was that big of a fan of it. And I think after doing it, my business grew like 77%, the following year or that year. So that was really powerful. I have done other Tony stuff. I know people are massively obsessed with Date with Destiny. Didn't personally love it so much. I'm not sure if that was just like the phase of time that I was in, that I'd already, done a lot of work, or if there was other stuff. I think a lot of life is around timing. And it's not just what you do and what you read, but it's like what you do and what you read at the right time. And so I didn't love that one. I didn't have any kind of huge breakthroughs, but the Business Mastery one was huge. The other event that really changed my life, which it's still really big, it's called MMT. Jason Ganyard, he's an amazing serial entrepreneur and super connector.
Yeah, he's actually been on the show.
Oh, has he? Awesome. I love Jason. I've known Jason for 5 or 6 years, and I was at his first event ever in Toronto. I literally thought this event was a scam when he sent out the email because it had like 15 speakers and 150 attendees. And it was like, I got to meet people like Lewis Howes and Tim Ferriss and so many ridiculously amazing people that I literally thought this event was a scam, but it was not. It was the first event of what has become just a very foundational community for me. And like Dave Asprey's in that community. Among JJ Virgin, that's how I met her. So Jason does a 150 person event every year, and I try to get to that every year. I can't go this year, but I've got there, I think at least 75% of the time. And that's been just a huge upgrade because there are 150 people from all over different industries. And you get to really see macro what's happening in things like Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, as well as e-commerce and speaking and different professional development things. So that event's been great. The event that I'm all in on right now in the group is really, we have our high level women's mastermind that actually was created out of the first Necker trip that I did. So while I was on Necker, my roommate, Natalie McNeil, she's an amazing superhuman that you should also have on the show and life hacker. She was like, how cool would it be if we brought a group of women to Necker Island? And I was like, that would be amazing. So she took the plunge and I think had to invest or commit to $800,000 up front to lead this women's group. I literally told her not to do it. She was like, do you think I should do this? Like once I heard it was 800K, I was like, no, do not do this. That's insane. But she did it. And she filled the group, and I'm one of the women in the group. And, I'm a woman of faith, and it's just interesting how God works. And our trip to Necker ended up getting postponed. And this group turned into a 2-year mastermind where we've got to go to DC together to stay at one of the girls' castles, to Hawaii, where one of the other girls lives. And we just got to go to South Africa with Richard Branson as well to his safari. So this group has been insane because it's extremely high level female entrepreneurs. And it's been very empowering for me to be in this group of women that just think so big, and we all pour into each other's businesses.
That is an awesome story. And talk about like taking the leap, like what a psychological upgrade. I think I'm going to rent all of Necker Island for $800K.
Right? Crazy.
Wow.
And she did it. I have so much respect for her for doing that. And I've actually told her so many times since, like, Natalie, like your boldness has inspired me so much. Like I want to take bigger risks because of the things that I've seen you do.
So cool. So cool. Now, I realize we've already talked for 25 minutes and I need to get to one of the most important things that I want to talk about, which is kind of financial superhumandom. We've talked a little bit on the show about entrepreneurship. I usually try and stay more in the health topics, but I think that I'm neglecting a really important thing, which is people getting to the level of financial superhumandom where they don't have to think or worry about money anymore. And, you shed some really interesting light on my business's financial situation, which even I, as an MBA, didn't know, like no one ever told me I could do that. Do you think that the financial literacy that you very clearly have, do you think that that helps people in an individual way? I mean, are there any things that you can share with people on how to gain control over their financial life, the way that you've gained control over so many businesses' financial lives?
Absolutely. And I can tell you the story of how I got passionate in this area. It actually was a story from my personal life. So after coming back from that amazing trip to Bali, I came back with a significant amount of debt. And so I have a very interesting upbringing, which I've really started to appreciate has probably been a huge conditioning for me and why I do what I do and how I do it. So I grew up in a very poor family. I mean, poor to like very basic. However, my mom and dad were immigrants from Poland. They became very successful when I was about 11, and then actually later even way more successful. So I've kind of had the growing up poor, but then also experiencing, country clubs and things like that later in life, which I think has been really interesting because I understand both sides of that. And so I really respect my father, especially with regards to finances, because he's just such an amazing entrepreneur, so driven, so strong-willed, and created an empire out of absolutely nothing against all odds. So I come back from Bali and I have all this debt and I have to finish this legal placement, which I'm literally hating my life. I'm working in a cubicle. in this building with all these lawyers, and I look around and I'm like, I don't want any of their lives. Like, this is like not what I want to do with my life. And one morning at breakfast, of course I moved back in with my parents after I come back from Bali because I have no money. And I turn to my dad and I'm like, Dad, this sucks. I have no money. I have this like job that I hate, like acting like the victim, like feel bad for me. My dad looked at me and he was like, oh my goodness, what is wrong with you? You make more money than like the average person in this city right now, and you have no expenses and you have no kids. This has nothing to do with the amount of money you're making. And this has everything to do with how you're managing your money. And so my big takeaway from that was like, I was a horrible steward of money. And I did not appreciate where I was at, what level I was at. And he made it very clear that I would not ever get to another level if I didn't figure this out at this level. So oftentimes people in their finances, whether it's personal or business, they say, well, I'll figure this out when I'm making a lot more money. Or I'll figure this out when I'm a millionaire, or I'll figure this out when I'm making six figures. And so money mindset and, stewardship of finances and money, that has nothing to do with what level of finances you're at. That is an internal thing that you really need to get a handle of at the level that you are currently at. So for me, like that conversation with my dad literally changed my life. I understood. I was like, I need to figure this out here. And if I don't figure out this here, I will always be poor and I will never figure this out. And you hear of stories of people that make millions of dollars that have no money. And you hear of stories of people that made, $30,000 for their whole lives. And when they die, their estate is worth like $500K or $1 million because of how they have saved and invested. So that internal skill set has nothing to do with how much money you make.
Wow, I really love that. And like, what an incredible story with your dad. I felt like I was right there with you guys. How do people change that money mindset? I mean, like, what does that look like?
So I think there's two parts to the neuroscience of this. One is you just need to do the work. Like you need to look at your numbers, whether it's personal finance or business finance, you just need to look. And I would say, entrepreneurs' biggest issue in this area is they're not looking. And then in personal finance, the same thing. People are just avoiding. They don't want to look at their credit card statements. They don't want to look at their bank balance. The other part of the upgrade is they need to have leverage on themselves of why they want to make this change, why they want to make this upgrade. So one exercise that I lead my high-level entrepreneur clients through is, and it sounds so silly and it sounds so basic and it sounds so like la la dreamland, but we do an exercise around why do you want to be really profitable? And I ask them questions like, and this is, great homework for your listeners. What would you buy? What would you experience? How would you feel? And who would you be? And so whether you're an entrepreneur or, a professional in a company, you can ask yourself these questions around your personal finances. If I saved X amount of money, like how would that make me feel? What would I be able to do? Or what would I be able to do for others? Because not all of this is about, us. Like some of the things that people say on the what would I buy is they would say like, I would buy my parents a house. So, it doesn't have to be all about us. It could also be around giving and things like that. But we really need to step into like that leverage point of why we even want to make a change.
That's phenomenal. And the first thing that you said, I mean, guilty, right? Like with the numbers, people don't budget, right? People don't look at it. And I even teach in one of my courses, like set your finances up so that you don't have to look at them, which I think, is good advice. Like make sure that your credit card is it's all the kind of Ramit Sethi advice. Like make sure your credit card auto pays, make sure that if you're investing in the stock market, set it up to automatically transfer to your brokerage account, like automate your finances. But at the same time, like, yeah, you called me out.
I'm against the automated finances.
Really? Tell me more.
Yes. So I actually, whether it's myself or different companies, some people pay the credit card for other companies. Like we have many businesses, but there's currently one company that I pay the credit card for. And so before I make a payment, I will go look through every transaction first before I pay. It takes literally 2 minutes. It's maybe not even 2 minutes, a 30-second skim. And so I don't like things to be on auto pay because then you literally will never look. And it's amazing how many times I've found out like, oh, wow, somebody double charged me, or, oh, my visa's been defrauded, or, oh, snap, I didn't realize that I was paying that much money for this thing that was on subscription or whatever. So I'm not about automating that part just because someone needs to look at it because there's always things there.
Yeah. I mean, I do have my bookkeeper looking at it, so I feel a bit better. But at the same time, like, I'm totally on board with what you're saying about, like, I probably need to have some kind of budgeting, right? Like, or look at my personal finances the way that I would look at my business finances. Like, hey, how much did I spend last month and where did I spend? The truth, though, is for me, the reason I don't look at it is my personal finances are like a joke. I expense everything to my business. Like someone looking at my personal finances would be like, who's this young man living in poverty? You know, like he doesn't even buy himself groceries. Poor guy.
Well, and I would chat with your accountant if he advises you to expense to that level. But, that's definitely between you and your accountant. I don't know if I would recommend that.
Right. And I'm exaggerating, of course.
I never comment on people's tax strategies. Is that something that they should deal with their accountants?
Totally. And I'm completely exaggerating. But
okay, perfect.
So people should look at the numbers. People should connect to their why. I really, really love that. What's a first step that people can take like right now, or a piece of homework that people can implement to kind of get a better feel for their finances? And I also want to ask you on top of that, do you use mint.com for your personal stuff, personal capital? Like, how do you keep a track of everything so you know that you're going in the right direction financially?
Okay, so I do not think people should follow my personal finance advice. And it would actually be really cool. If you haven't had a personal finance expert on, I can definitely make some recommendations offline because I think this would be really, really great because to be superhuman, yes, you also need to be superhuman with your finances. And like, you need money in life. Like, you need money to do things and to make an impact. And recently someone was having this conversation with me about like, broke people, they don't have that much influence.
Right.
Like if you want to have influence in your community, in your city, like the people that have the most influence make the most money. And I'm all about like creating impact and influence. So my personal, current money strategy is I'm so good on the business side that I actually want to just kind of YOLO on the personal. And so that said, I have some very high level systems and processes that I've set up so that I can do that. So one thing I learned at Tony Robbins is Tony says you have your business and then you also have your personal business. So every, person in the world should have a special bank account that is their savings account, that is not their personal operating account. And they commit every time they get paid. So whether you're an employee or you are an entrepreneur, every time you get paid, you allocate a certain percentage into that bank account. Okay. And so for me, we have a few. One of them is our savings account. It's just literally our savings account. The other one is called our cheese account. And so my husband has this dream to buy this property in Rancho Santa Fe, San Diego, and he wants to build this property, which he calls the cheese, which is how he looks at it is Richard Branson has Necker Island. It's a place where entrepreneurs can come and friends can come and people can host retreats. So he wants to build that. So we have a very special account for the cheese. We also have an account that is our winter away account. So we're snowbirds in our 30s. And so because we don't even want to think about it, we budget for that throughout the year. So every month we allocate a certain amount of money into this winter away account so that when we come to California or somewhere warm for the winter, we have this exorbitant amount of money that we know we can just spend on all the things that we do when we're on vacation. So I go to the spa a lot and we, bless our friends and go out for dinners and do things like that. So beyond that, in our operating account, I YOLO. Once I've allocated the money to savings and the money to the winter away account and the money to the other savings account and the cheese account, I literally do not think about my personal finances. I'm not trying to budget. I'm not trying to find the cheapest thing, though I am just in general pretty I'm not wasteful. However, there have been seasons where we were not able to live like that. So when we were not in those seasons, we would follow things like what Dave Ramsey talks about with, having a personal budget and every month, like really looking and analyzing, like how much did we spend on Starbucks coffee and things like that. And I personally just don't like doing that. And I don't teach on that.
Totally.
But there are seasons in life where you have to do that and where you literally should maybe be thinking about like, maybe I shouldn't be eating out and maybe I shouldn't be buying that $4 Starbucks coffee if that is impacting. So it depends on where you are at. But I think the deal breaker is like you must have a personal savings account as well as an account for any other big expenditure that you are saving towards, whether that is a house or a car or something like that, and really using your bank accounts as a source of budgeting for those things.
I really like that. And I've been reading this book, Profit First, which I think I'm going to start doing as well. It's the same idea, like decide how much you want your company to profit and then just pull that money out. Like that's where my profit goes every month. It's this amount and sorry, we're just going to cut our ad budget because, we're not going to invest in this new project because we need to make this much minimum profit every month. And I love doing that for personal. I need to do that. And as you were talking, I was thinking about, I have this dream of having this lake house and I want to buy it like this year, lake house in the forest. But when you lump all your money together, it's very easy to go, well, I shouldn't. When you watch a sum of money grow, because every single month you've been setting aside money for it, it's very easy to go, well, the money's there. It's literally for that. Let's do it.
You should have a lake house account, and most banks, you can actually rename the account. So you can literally call it like lake house account.
I'm literally doing it right now. The other thing though, it's so hard to do as an entrepreneur because, you retain earnings in your company, you wait. It's like when I don't need to pay myself right now and I'll, pay myself later. And so it's hard.
The other thing you mentioned, Mike Michalowicz, I'm a fan. He is amazing. So there is a hierarchy of business finance. And it's really important for people to understand this because when people say like, I'm going to run profit first, I'm like, that's awesome. I like it. And I do the multiple bank accounts. However, profit first ends at level 2. So let me tell you quickly what the hierarchy is. Yeah. So the first level of hierarchy is compliance. So this is, I am doing the thing within my business finances to be compliant to the government. So I am paying my taxes. And so, this also applies in your personal, money, like make sure you're paying your taxes. It's very important. The IRS, the CRA, whatever governing body, they will find you. They have unlimited power almost. And so if you're not doing that, get to level 1 and clean that up and make that a priority. The next level is cash flow management. We're having a budget. And so Profit First is an amazing book that is disguised as we can't tell that he's talking about having a budget, but he's found a creative way to talk about a budget and has tricked so many people into doing this thing that they would normally be scared to do, which is why I have so much respect for Mike Michalowicz. He has done the unthinkable and convinced so many people to get excited about budgeting.
Right. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So the third level, and this is where my zone of genius is and where I have a lot of fun, is the third level is financial analysis and financial levers. And so you can't really get there until you have done level 1 and level 2. But level 3 is where it gets really, really fun. And you start to understand your business on a deeper level and can start making financial decisions from the numbers.
Yeah. And you're saying like after a certain point, this profit first idea just doesn't work.
No, I'm just saying that that's level 2. So you can't, a lot of people will just do profit first and say, my business finances are done. But I'm like, no. Profit first is just a way to manage the money that's coming in. It's not actually getting you to make more money or be smarter with your money.
Got it. Well, that is awesome. I want to ask you a couple more questions before I let you go. You are really, really good at outsourcing. Tell me a little bit about how, because as you said, you realized early on that you could not get everything done. Geek out with me a little bit about your outsourcing routine.
I know what you're trying to get me to tell you about. I was telling you another time about my weekly hair routine. So I have a lot of hair. sounds so silly, and I know you have a mostly male audience, but they can maybe inspire their wives and girlfriends to do this. I have a lot of hair, and if I were to do my hair myself, it would literally take me 2 to 3 hours and it would look terrible because I'm just not gifted in this area. So many years ago, I instituted this weekly blowout process where I go to a hair place, someone else does my hair. It usually takes between 45 minutes and an hour, and it's pretty much done for the week. I just have to touch it up a little bit for like a minute or two every morning. And then there's this amazing product called dry shampoo, which again, a lot of men wouldn't know about, but this actually like extends your blowouts and you don't have to wash your hair for 5 to 7 days. So while I'm doing all that, it's actually one of my most productive email times. I'll just be on my phone and I'll be emailing for an hour, get all my administrative stuff done while someone is doing my hair. So that's one of my favorite little hacks.
Saves you so much time.
Yeah. And besides that, I'm really good at 2 things, and I try just not to do anything else outside of this. So whether it's, administrative stuff or even think time, my EA is very smart. I'll literally have her think for me. I'll be like, hey, I need to come up with a solution for this. Can you think about this problem? Or can you think about how I might answer this question? So anything outside of my zone of genius, or if I don't have time, even if it's in my zone of genius, I have smart people around me that can do, the little things and sometimes even the big things. So I can do the thing or actually nothing and rest.
I love that. I love that. That's really smart, delegating thinking. I mean, I kind of do that with Brandon on our team who's been on the show before. I'll be like, hey, I think someone in our team, hint, hint, should read this book and then come up with a strategy. And he'll be like, I'm not doing anything. I could read that book. I'm like, yeah, read that book. It's so great. It's even though I'm a speed reader, sometimes you just don't have the headspace to read another book.
Totally.
Any other superhuman hacks or habits or routines that you feel help you perform at your highest level?
So I'm very low tech. I know you're very high tech. The only real tech thing I use, and you're going to laugh because this is so basic, I really, really love Boomerang for Gmail.
Yeah, I don't use it, but I've heard really good things.
I love it. It is my thing. And I am one of the, I think the very small number of people who actually really likes email. I don't feel like email is a pain point for me today. Maybe in the future it will be. And my husband's EA runs his inbox. I don't have anyone in my inbox. I actually manage it myself, which maybe is a growth opportunity for me. So ask me next year if I'm still in my own inbox. Besides that, what are the other ones? I mean, I think around again, as women, we have this other thing that we need to do, which is get dressed and look presentable. Right. So I'm a terrible shopper. I have a stylist. She is incredible. And she will literally buy my clothes and pick out my clothes. And I think she must be somewhat minimalist as well, because she'll pick out a capsule of things. It's not the whole, just the Steve Jobs black turtleneck thing, but she'll pick out, maybe 10 things and they all go together and they travel really well. And I don't really need to think about it. And I'll just wear those kind of 10 things in different combinations that probably give me, 30 outfits, something like that.
That is really, really cool. By the way, I just want you to know that I take Diana's advice very seriously, and I now have a Lake House Fund account already open, already funded. How proud are you?
I'm so proud, and I would like an invitation once you've purchased it, and we can celebrate there.
No, that's for sure happening. The whole idea behind this lake house is having a retreat center that I can mastermind that isn't Necker Island.
For sure. And I mean, the celebration thing actually brings to another point. So high achievers and superhumans, they're often really bad at celebrating. So I think building some kind of celebration practice in is so, so key. So whether that is taking your spouse out for dinner or buying yourself a new pair of Nike Air Max kicks, once you've hit a goal, that really just trains your brain that you get rewarded for hitting these things, and also that you can take a pause and rest and get very rejuvenated from hitting those goals. Because if not, you're just going, and then you burn out.
I love that. That's a really good reminder for me to stop, smell the roses, and celebrate. It's if you've heard of Dan Sullivan's gap versus gain thing.
No, I have not heard of that framework. I love Dan though.
It's really good. I just learned it the other day, so I'm going to share it, even though we're running a little long. The idea is like, why are entrepreneurs or just people, high achievers in general, like why are we the most depressed people? And it's because we look at the gap between where we are and where we want to go. But where we want to go is the horizon. Just like we talked about psychological upgrade, right? You join Summit, all of a sudden you're like, well, wait a minute, there's a next level. You join Genius Network, you see people who their businesses are impacting 1 million people's lives a year, and you're like, that's the next place. So the horizon never gets any closer, no matter how fast you're running. So Dan has this framework where it's like, turn around and run backwards. Instead of looking at the gap, look at the gain. Like, look how far you've come. Pick a landmark that's like, holy crap, a year ago, this podcast had only done 2 million downloads, and now it's done over 1 million in less than a year. It's like, look at the gain that you've made. And then it's okay to turn back around and be like, all right, we need to get to wherever the next goal is. But taking that moment to turn around and look at how far you've come.
So good. I love that so much.
Dan is so smart.
He really is.
I'm going to my first strategic coach meeting next week. I'm so excited.
Oh yeah. It's such a great community. I've heard so much good about the people that, are there.
Totally. Well, this has been so much fun. I have to let you go. But before I do, I want to ask you, if people take away one lesson from this episode and they carry it with them for the rest of their lives, what would you hope for that to be?
Yeah, there's so many other things that I wanted us to chat about. It just went by so fast. So definitely my gift and my zone of genius is execution. And I think what holds people back the most is it's so simple. So I hope that you have ears to hear this, everyone listening. You just have to do the thing. Like, you just have to do it. Whether that is like saying yes to joining, Jonathan's mastermind, or going on that trip, or, starting that side hustle. Like, you just have to do it. Like, stop over analyzing. And if you do, like, find someone around you that can help you process through that. But really, it is all about getting into that state where you are taking action.
Yes. That is a phenomenal note to end on. Diana, where can people reach you and learn more about you? I know you do some amazing coaching for the entrepreneurs in the audience. Where should we send people to get in contact with you?
Yeah, for sure. I work with very high level entrepreneurs, at least multiple 6 to multiple 7. I don't currently work with beginners, but I'm dianahouse.com. And then I recently got onto Instagram, and I am at Diana Powerhouse.
Awesome. Well, you are a powerhouse, and I always enjoy chatting, and I hope we will keep in touch. I know I'm not a female entrepreneur, so I can't come to Necker Island with you, but I really hope we meet up at an event or a Genius Network or a Mastermind Talks very, very soon.
I would love that.
Awesome. Talk soon, Diana. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, super friends, that is all we have for you today. But I hope you guys really enjoyed the show, and I hope you learned a ton of actionable information, tips, advice that will help you go out there and overcome the impossible. If you've enjoyed the show, please take a moment to leave us a review on iTunes or Stitcher, or drop us a quick little note on the Twitter machine at GoSuperHuman. Also, if you have any ideas for anyone out there who you would love to see on the show, we always love to hear your recommendations. You can submit on our website, or you can just drop us an email and let us know. That's all for today, guys. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for tuning in to the Becoming Superhuman podcast. For more great skills and strategies, or for links to any of the resources mentioned in this episode, visit www.becomingasuperhuman.com/podcast. We'll see you next time.